I was going to begin really with a couple of rumors that were swirling around. One of them being about the James Bond franchise, because it feels like the whole franchise has been kind of in limbo since Daniel Craig hung up
Since
the
they killed
tuxedo.
him.
Since they killed him, yeah, which was an odd choice, but they're obviously
Did not
planning
like
to make
that
more
movie.
Bond movies with a new Bond, because apparently he will return. And the question is obviously being who's going to play Bond and who's going to direct the next movie. So the rumor that seems to be doing the rounds at the moment is that Christopher Nolan is going to direct not one, but possibly 2 or 3 films, and that they are eyeing Aaron Taylor-Johnson for the main role. Now,
Really
I don't know
good.
how much credence to lend to this, but apparently they were interested in having Christopher Nolan direct and to take it back as a more period piece in the time where the books are actually set. So you're talking 1950s,
1960s, yeah.
Yeah, which I've got to be honest, sounds awesome, because I'm kind of done with the hyper advanced technology of the current era. I think it almost like restricts what you can do. I think Bond is much more at home during the Cold War, where he's having to use his wits more than high technology. And if you could do something that was nice and gritty, set in the 50s, post World War II. Get a guy like Aaron Taylor-Johnson to do it, because I think Bullet Train kind of showed that he's got the swagger, he's got the attitude, he's got the physique to play Bond. He could do it potentially. I think this sounds like a pretty good idea. Like I say, I've got no idea how much credence to lend to these rumors, but it sounds pretty good from what I'm hearing.
I'm always tempted to say it won't happen just because it does sound like a good idea. And when have we ever actually known these people to do the right thing? But I'm with you. I mean, Bond, if you take it back to an older decade, there's also sort of the implied class of 1950s, 1960s, in which sort of Bond's swagger has a little bit of extra class again to it.
Spy.
As opposed to Daniel Craig sort of lumbering through the modern world as a very modern Bond, which pleased nobody.
Yeah,
I always
we don't
felt
need
like
a Bond for a modern audience. And yeah, like the whole gist of Bond was that he was in World War II. I think that was the basis of the character, and this is very much a post World War II Cold War situation, where he's now gone from being a soldier to a spy, which I think is a great setting. I love that period.
I completely agree. And my parents spent a bit of their life in Soviet Hungary. So that felt like I was on the set of some kind of Cold War spy adventure, just visiting it. I mean, there's just so many things that happened, when I was there in 72. The feeling of it is fantastic. I mean, and you take a movie like The Day of the Jackal, where we know what the ending is, yet it's an unbelievably gripping film.
Yeah.
So
the James Fox version, not the Bruce Willis one.
Oh, no. Yes, the James Fox version. And there's no reason why you can't know the outcome of a James Bond movie, yet make the pieces as fantastic as the Day of the Jackal. I would totally look forward to that. In fact, I did a video where I said I'd love to get the 1940s comic version of Batman, Superman, the Angel, and Kazaa the Great. I would love to see the old cars and have them reduce the level of powers and shit that they were able to do down to the level of the comic books of that era. Now, I think this James Bond with Nolan from the Cold War would be just amazing. Very Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy too, right? I mean,
yeah, no, it's an exact parallel for that sort of time period, and I feel like this kind of genre would be well suited to Nolan's tastes as a director. This guy likes labyrinthine storylines, and he likes to play with expectations and had sudden revelations that are built up over the course of the movie. Like that's all perfectly in line with Bond. So I think he could do it. Would probably be a very very grounded, gritty kind of spy story. Like I think it would lose some of the fantastical elements of Bond, but then that's where the franchise has gone under Daniel Craig anyway. So I think it could be fine.
That's the thing. There's no picking up from where Craig has left it off. There's no need to maintain that continuity. There's no need to respect that timeline. Just let it go.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know, how do you do this? Like maybe every run of a new Bond now just becomes a completely separate universe. They're disconnected from everything else, and it's like every time you get a new actor playing Bond, it's just like a whole new continuity. And when he dies or retires or whatever, we just start again, and it's a whole new continuity once more.
Yeah, because the Craig probably do it that way. Really tried to not only bind to the overall Bond sort of continuity, but to bind all of the Craig films together as well. And it's like they spent way too much time on that. Should have focused a little bit on telling good stories.
Yeah. Well, it was in this weird middle ground where it's like it references past events and like, the Aston Martin and stuff, as if that's something that he's lived through. But at the same time, Casino Royale was meant to be his origin story. It's just like his first movie and his first major mission as a 00 agent. So it's like, well, how does any of that work? Which one is it? Like, are you starting up a new continuity and doing an origin, or are you just trying to play this sort of Bond game that every other actor's done, where it's like a loose recognition that it's all part of the same character, but we don't talk about it too much. You can't have both, really.
I think crazy.
Nolan would be amazing as it doing it, though. Nolan would be great because he did Inception and everything, and to me, those are kind of like Bond movies, sort of in a way too. How they were like filmed.
I feel like
and everything.
Bond is a good experiment with Nolan. I wouldn't guarantee great films, but I would happily see what he'd come out with. But I was going to say they had Christoph Waltz playing Blofeld. That was a thing that happened, and nobody wants to remember it. Like, damn, that's how bad they did. Good old was that Spectre?
That was Spectre.
Yeah,
Spectre, yeah.
The transition from World War II into spying is a fascinating story. I don't think. I mean, I would imagine, even though it was never written, kind of an origin story would be neat. I mean, because I'm a history buff, that seeing the end of World War II, seeing what the Soviets were doing, seeing that they had already gotten into some heavy core spying like so quickly, and then the Brits were scared to death, and the Americans were somnambulant and didn't really realize that the Soviets were already, at DEFCON 5 when it came to infiltrating their countries. And the catch up that was required, even though everyone was exhausted from the war. There's a great story in there. I mean, it's a premise, not a story, but I mean, there's a premise in there to have a James Bond be created out of that. I would, if it could be well written, I would find that interesting.
Yeah, it would be a fun way of balancing out as well, because you could have a Bond origin story, Bond going behind enemy lines, Operation Paperclip, but then you have to effectively spy against the Russians and the Americans as the British attempt to work the middle ground between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And Bond has always had a bit of a history with like on and off relationship with the CIA, sometimes allied, but never quite of the same interest set. You can explore, a really, really fascinating, complex, dark period of history with a lot of moral ambiguity on both sides, without lapsing into maybe some of the slightly too on the nose anti-communist stuff of the 1980s. Not that that's not a worthy endeavor, it's just that sometimes the stories suffered for that, I think.
Yeah, because in a lot of the I assume the books as well, but like in the sort of Roger Moore or the Sean Connery era of Bond, like very much at the height of the Cold War, the Soviets weren't necessarily portrayed as villains. Like they were just other players in the same game. You quite often, I can't remember the leader of the Soviet, the KGB, but he was a recurring character where he wasn't necessarily a villain. He often had a vested interest in the mission as much as MI6 did. And so you quite often got that interplay between the two. And like there was even a couple of movies where Bond had to work with a KGB agent. So
a very ugly woman. Yes, it was a terrible situation. It was horrible.
Yeah, that was Barbara Bach, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was horrible.
Oh, she was a hottie back in the day. Nice one.
Have you guys seen Chloe, the German Netflix spy series?
No.
So I mean, I love it. I mean, I would love it if one of you guys saw it. You could confirm whether I'm nuts or not. But it's at the end of the Cold War. and the Berlin Wall is coming down. She's a Stasi agent that goes into West Germany to kill people for the Stasi. Then things change. Her bosses, who have been stealing money, go off to villas. They're rich actually because they've been taking all this cash. Because obviously these are honorable people, and they try to kill her because she knows too much, and obviously she doesn't die. And then she has a really hard time negotiating the West and everything that it offers, because she's lived in East Germany her entire life, and she's bitter about what she's had to go through, but she's somehow still loyal. And then she goes into the West to kill off all her former bosses. And it's just...
What's it called again?
Chloe. K-L-E-O. Cleo.
Write that down.
And the reason I bring it up is that the atmosphere is one of the characters. East Germany is a character. I love it when physical locations become characters. The people's attitudes are characters. And then you've got the West, of course, and its freedoms at the time, which are a shock to her, and she's kind of bitter about that. But and she's no Mary Sue. Oh my God! Like she gets beaten up very, very badly, and just comes through. And I think there's a season 2 coming. So if a Bond could recreate that kind of atmosphere, I think it'd be fantastic.
I would love that. Like, for me, my family was devastated by World War II. Like, most of my dad's side of the family died during World War II. And then his father only escaped because he was a carpenter and knew a couple of languages. Moved to Canada, had a bunch of kids, ended up taking his own life because of all the horrors he saw. So I've always had a really strong connection to World War II. So if they had a Bond movie where even if he wasn't an agent at the time, and it was an origin story, and he was like a British soldier going behind the lines, fighting the Nazis, whatever, learning stuff. And then at the end of the movie, they're like, hey, by the way, you did so good. We want you to join this secret agency. And then he's an agent now. I think that'd be sweet. Like, honestly, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. As Platoon said, though, like, because we're so enthusiastic about this and we're already coming up with like really cool scenarios, it seems like a great idea. Clearly, they will not do that, and it will just be some crappy continuation of Bond in the current day with all the crap that comes with it.
It'll be Daniel Craig's daughter.
Probably,
or whatever.
Yeah. There was a thing that did the rounds recently, and it was like an extract from the latest Bond novel, which was
that's so tragic.
Oh, God, don't bring this up.
It's
so
fantastic.
The villain is an anti-immigration, climate change denying Andrew Tate fan or something. And there's actually a bit where Bond comments on how like a meeting that he goes to undercover is so lacking in diversity.
Oh no! Are you serious?
It's the most pathetic thing I have ever seen.
Quote, the villain hadn't been the least bit concerned about ensuring that half of the people he'd hired to carry out his coup should be women, non-white, or disabled. The implication there kind of being that the coup would be better if it had been more diverse, but
just people like rolling around on wheelchairs with machine guns mounted on them or something.
And if you want an extra tragic angle to that, it's written by Charlie Higson, and Charlie Higson wrote The Fast Show, which, like, if you're familiar with old sort of 90s British sitcoms, was really quite funny. It was really good, and it was it was lightweight. It wasn't particularly political in either direction, but it was ultra short sketches. Some of them were created this whole cast of much loved characters. My family references The Fast Show sketches on every get together. It's just one of those types of really quotable shows. And this guy wrote that and is now writing this.
Thanks for watching this clip from Open Bar. This is just a little reminder that the Critical Doggo plush is still available to pre-order. There's a few days left in the campaign, so if you want to order one, now's the time. Either way, I'll leave a link in the description. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.